Okay. Hi, Professor. So today, me, Naya, Abigail, Chelsea, Clara, and Jocelyn, and Karla will be going over the diversity and adaptations of desert plants. Next slide.
So we'll begin with an overview of what desert plants are. So when we think of desert plants, our mind probably jumps to the saguaro and prickly pear that we're used to seeing, but there is a wide variety of desert plants with all kinds of adaptations to help them survive in their harsh environment. So first, we just wanted to define the word xerophyte, which is plants which are found in desert environments, and they have unique adaptations that make them drought tolerant. Xerophytes are able to withstand very harsh conditions because of their adaptations, which allow them to survive with very little water and in very arid or very dry environments.
STEM adaptations. First and foremost, stems are used to support the plant and occasionally store nourishment. Several sorts of stems will be needed in a dry environment. Some desert plants have no leaves, a waxy covering, spikes, and/or prickles. Pictured above are some plants whose stems have went through adaptation. The plant on the left is known as the yellow variegated agave plant. It has a waxy layer over its leaves to help store water. The middle plant is known as the golden barrel cactus. It has spikes and prickles so thirsty animals will stay away from it. Lastly, the plant on the right is known as the Peruvian apple cactus. It has no leaves, which helps prevent water loss through the process of transpiration. Some of these modifications were made to provide defense mechanisms. Next slide, please. Okay. And on the last slide, I mentioned how a few modifications were made to provide defense measures. Pictured above are some desert plants who have thorns to defend themselves from herbivores. This defense mechanism helps them conserve water. Next slide.
So for leaf adaptations, desert plants are adapted to their arid environment in many ways. Small leaves on desert plants help reduce moisture loss during photosynthesis. Small leaves mean less evaporative surface per leaf. In addition, a small leaf in the sun doesn't reach as high a temperature as a large leaf. Hairy leaves reflect the sunlight and block the movement of air. Both of these defenses help reduce the loss of water through transpiration. One example is the desert ironwood that has hairy blue-gray leaves and grows 15 to 20 feet tall. Another is the brittle bush, which has leaves covered with a thick mat of tiny hairs that make the pale green leaves look gray. Tiny leaves have less surface and therefore fewer stomata to lose water from transpiration. These small leaves often flutter in the breeze, helping keep the plant cool and reducing the loss of water through the air. The little leaf Palo Verde tree is one example of a tree using this kind of transpiration. Next slide. Some plants have narrow, sharp, and pointed leaves. The smaller surface area makes it harder for the leaf to lose water through transpiration. A good example of this are the pointed leaves of the Joshua tree, a species of yucca and a member of the lily family of plants. Some desert plant leaves have a limited number of stomata, which cuts down on the amount of evaporated water that can escape. Other desert plants have stomata that open only at night when it is cooler and the risk of losing water through transpiration is lower. The leaves of the jade plant, a succulent native to regions of South Africa, have stomata that shut down during the day. Succulents including aloe and cacti have thick leaves that store moisture in the special plant cells called vacuoles. The stored moistures help the plant survive long periods without rainfall. The agave plant is one example of a succulent that survives this way. Next slide.
Okay, so now we're going to be looking at root adaptations. There are countless adaptations found in the roots of desert plants. And this is just due to the environment that desert plants are found in. They have very, very little rainfall, and this causes there to be very little moisture in the soil. So the root systems are adapted to maximize water absorption. Now, the root adaptations are not going to be the same for every type of desert plant, and it'll vary widely based on the specific climate that the desert plant is found in, just the overall environment, the soil, and the type of plant specifically. Next slide. So one common type of root adaptation that's found in desert plants is roots that are expansive laterally. These roots are found close to the surface of the soil, and this helps the roots cover as much surface area as possible in order to increase water absorption. This adaptation is found in plants both in warm and cold deserts. And you can see that in the image on the left, it's commonly found in cactus. Now, another adaptation is long taproots. Some desert plants have a very deep and long taproot that can be as long as 30 meters, and this is so that the taproot can penetrate the soil in order to reach the groundwater, which is located deep underground. It also helps to anchor the plant and to keep it stable. And an example of this is the mesquite tree, which has extremely long taproots. And the acacia tree is shown in the image on the right, which has a deep taproot. Next slide. Another adaptation that many desert plants have is the ability for their roots to grow against gravity. So instead of growing downward or laterally like most roots, they actually can have roots that can grow upward. And this is a reaction to rainfall. They're oriented towards where the water will be in order to increase water absorption. There are also some roots that are superencoded, and this means that the roots have a waxy coating on them, and this prevents water loss through the roots. So the water is still absorbed at the tip of the roots, but it prevents water from leaving through the roots as well. And then a final adaptation is tubers. This just means that there are roots that are fleshy and thick, and they store water for the plant, and we actually saw an image of that a few slides back. Next slide.
Hot environment desert plants. The temperatures over 100 degrees Fahrenheit with a year round of hot and dry. They store their water through their stems, roots, and leaves. The desert plants are adapted to be able to survive in the hot and dry environment. Recently, climate change has been causing for the desert to heat up even more than it already does. The desert is already twice as hot because there's no humidity, which has now been affecting desert plants by making it harder for them to live. An example that I provided is a plant named saguaro. Saguaros are only found in Arizona, being the second largest cactus in the United States. The saguaro desert plants provides shelter for the desert wildlife animals, and they grow slowly, which can take up to 50 to 70 years to grow in our. Next slide, please. Coastal environment desert plants. The sea gives uniqueness, properties, and benefits that are not found in any other desert. The coastal desert plants use their roots and thick, fleshy leaves in order to absorb and store as much nutrients and moisture. The temperature changes. They have cool winters followed along by hot summers. The days of winter they receive fog, and they also do not receive any precipitation due to the fact that they're next to the ocean, and the air is unable to hold the moisture, which is what makes them desert plants. An example that I provided is the salt bush. They're heavily branched and highly tolerant of salt environments. Next slide, please. Cold environment desert plants. The temperature in cold environment desert is 2 to 4 degrees Celsius, and it's yearly cold. Cold desert have salty and heavy soil. Therefore, the plants that survive the most are the florals. The plants have to adapt to the dryness. There's no precipitation, and changes of receiving rain are very low. The floral plants lose their leaves due to the drought, but in the summer, the leaves grow back slowly. Next slide, please. Subtropical environment desert plants. The temperature in the subtropical are warm temperatures year-round with high wind speeds. The subtropical plants can store water for a long period of time due to low humidity. Subtropical plants are bright tropical colors. An example that I provided is a colocasia. Next slide, please.
Okay, C4 and CAM metabolism. So first, just a general overview of photosynthesis. It's the process by which plants use sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to make energy. There are two processes within photosynthesis, and that is photolysis and carbon fixation. Photolysis is the process in which light energy is used to break the bonds in water, and carbon fixation is when CO2 is combined with a sugar to form a carbon chain, which can be turned into glucose for energy for the plant. All plants undergo photolysis in the same way most of the time, but there are three different processes for carbon fixation, and that's C3, C4, and CAM. C3 is used by plants that live in nice environments, so there's no extreme factors that will negatively affect photosynthesis, so it can go about the process in a normal way. So that would be CO2 combining with rubisco to form a 3-carbon sugar that will produce glucose and O2 as a byproduct. C4 is used by plants that live in humid environments, so lots of light, lots of heat, and lots of water. Instead of a 3-carbon chain, it will produce a 4-carbon chain, and that 4-carbon chain moves to a bundle sheath cell where it is broken down back into CO2 and goes about the Calvin cycle as it does in the C3 plants. And then there's the CAM, which is used in desert plants. Because of the heat during the day, they only take in CO2 at night to reduce water loss. So it takes in the CO2 and stores it as an acid until the day comes around, and it can use the photolysis to do the Calvin cycle as normal. Next slide.
Okay, one example of desert plants would be the tree tumbo. The Namib Desert is one of the driest places on Earth and is home of the tree tumbo. Some of the plants can live up to 1,000 years old. They do only have 2 leaves that each have unique structures on their leaves that allow them to store moisture. They also have the ability to perform CAM photosynthesis. They can also grow up to 26 feet in circumference. Another example would be the desert willow. The Chihuahuan Desert is the largest desert in the United States and is home to the desert willow. The desert willow is a desert-adapted plant known for their bright purple and pink flowers. They are drought-tolerant and live in salty soil. This produces stronger branches and limits the risk of damage. And then we have our references.
Thank you for watching our presentation. Bye.
Bye.